Well, for more on this story, I'm joined by Paul Divakar. He's General Secretary of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. Paul, good to speak to you this afternoon. This is a tragic story. Could the suicide of Rohith been prevented?
Yes, it could have prevented if we had implemented the several laws and policies against caste-based discrimination and violence. Unfortunately, some of them remained on paper, and the policy commitment is not there from the authorities or at the lower level, the duty bearers. And the society at large still has not gotten out of the casteist mentality, which drives people to desperation, at times violence, at times desperation of suicide.
And Paul, as you mentioned there, the caste system is so entrenched in India. Why do you think it is that in 2016 we're still seeing it so powerful and so powerful for people?
This type of systems, I think, exist in all countries. Some countries have better policies and better implementations. You see that even in USA against people of African American descent. You see it in Europe against several other descents, and sometimes it's against religion. In our country, it is against the discrimination against the Dalits. And I think this has been very deeply entrenched into our religious and cultural text, which is still breaking above the law.
Paul, has the government done enough to try and tackle this issue?
Governments can do much, much more. I think there needs to be a political will. They need to mobilize. They need to make sure the mechanisms that they have set clearly can address these issues as and when they arise. Not just as and when they arise, but much, much before. Like, for example, there are several policies that have been brought in by even the University Grants Commission, which oversees these types of issues in all universities, and they have not implemented their policy. The resources that are allocated for addressing discrimination or for bridging this inequality gap between the Dalits and the others has not been sufficiently, the resources are not sufficiently utilized. And so you have these kinds of fallouts, that violence breaks out and exclusion still continues even in these centers of so-called centers of excellence.
Well, Paul, as you say, the law is there, it's just not being used effectively. Does there need to be a cultural mind shift in India to make sure that the law is respected?
Yeah, definitely. The cultural mindset cannot just come voluntary good behavior. You need to have policies, you need to have clear implementation systems, you need to have mechanisms at all levels, and you need to finance these mechanisms. And you need to also at the same time recognize that there is a clear merit in those who are being discriminated and bring them more and more into policy and decision making. I think this dual actions, I think, are very much lacking in this country.
Well, Paul Divakar from the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us.